on in the community. So we're so glad that you're with us today. Christy, would you mind getting that door for us over there? We had a lot going on today, so. So, Sean, thank you.
Good morning, guys. Thank you so much for the invitation. I'm one of your 20%. When I was thinking of that this morning when Reverend Amy, and she tells me to call her Amy, when Amy asked me to come in, I said yes, and then I thought, well, then I should go to the service first, and so, and then stay, and I just thoroughly enjoyed what I was with this morning, so thank you so much for the invitation.
Oh, I didn't even tell her to say that, so that works really well.
There's nothing practiced here.
Yeah, so just a reminder, the theme for today is service, and obviously Principal Minna is here because we have this connection with Camino Real Middle School, which predates me. It was already going on before I was here, but we're so glad to be able to continue it. One of the things that we really believe, Sean, is that learning each other's stories helps us cultivate compassion and empathy, helps us when reconciliation is needed because we know more about each other and we can relate. So we're here to hear about Camino, but also to hear about you.
Thank you.
So let's start with where you grew up. Tell us about your childhood.
Well, sometimes I share my childhood with kids so that they know, they're not alone and some of the things they go through. And so my childhood, I will be honest with you, was pretty tough. So my mom, who I'll talk a little bit about today because she's, if it wasn't for her strength, I know for a fact I wouldn't be here today, and I certainly wouldn't be in the position I am today. And so she was just an amazing example for me. But she was given up when she was 12. Her parents were musicians, and they didn't want the bother of kids, so they turned her and her two brothers over to the state. And so she ended up in an orphanage, and her two brothers ended up in foster care. My mom ended up on the streets by the time she was 13, and she met my father when she was 14, and he was 28, and so we know what that means today, but back then it was acceptable. And he was on parole, and they ended up getting married because she ended up getting pregnant. She was a waitress. They were married for a while, and I can still remember when I was 6 years old, she tried to get away from him 3 times. He was a bit of a criminal, and then he was highly, highly abusive. So we ran from him, and I can still remember the day she put us in the back of her car and she drove away. He found us the very next day, and I say this so that I can talk about kids a little bit later. He beat her up, told her if she tried to leave him again, he'd kill her, and he went out for a pack of cigarettes, and she put us in the car and drove away again. We lived in our car for a little bit, and eventually she found herself a job as a waitress, and growing up, that's what she did. So I can still remember she was so open about things, and she would take her tips every day and put them on the kitchen table, and we would count her dimes and quarters. Back then, that's what you got for tips, and we're in the 60s, guys. And so so the end result was she would say, here's our bills, and this is what I've made, and you need to tell me what you need. But we always knew how much money was in the house, and her strength to take 3 kids, and she was young. I was her last child, and when she left my father, I was 6. And she had me, I was born on May 28th. Her birthday was May 25th. And she was 20 when she had me. And I was the 3rd child. So she was 26 years old when she had the strength to pick up and leave. We hid for 5 years. I missed a year of school during that time. And eventually, it settled itself down. And what is amazing about her is that she worked at the airport. We were in Houston. And she worked at the airport at Dobbs House, and Continental Airlines approached her and asked her if she would like to work for them, and she said sure. And she ended up, you think that's glamorous, but she cleaned airplanes. That's what she did as her job. And she worked herself up to an executive position with Continental, and then eventually she was head of DFW security when 9/11 happened. And so that's the trajectory of her life, and with only about a 6th grade education. And what a great example for me. Because one of the things that we all learned in our family is that if you want something, you work for it. You do what you have to do. And one of the greatest pieces of advice that she gave me a lot of advice. Some of it's funny. I can still remember one time I was attending a church, you'll love this, and I was in my room and I was praying. And this was the kind of salt of the earth that she was. And she walked in and she said, you need to stop all this praying. And I just turned to her and I said, why? And she said, because God gave you a brain and he expects you to use it. So quit asking him for all the answers. And I just thought that was hilarious. And that sticks with me to this day. Whenever I'm like in despair and I'm like, I need to pray or I need to figure it out. It's one or the others and stuff. And so she was just amazing. But she said something to me one time that really stuck with me, and it was, sometimes you have to do what you don't want to do to get where you want to be. And so realize that that's what you have to do. And I was never a great academic kid, but I can still remember during my, 6-8 years of undergraduate school, so there you go, I remember that thought in my head, okay, I'm going to have to go do what I don't want to do to get where I want to be. And so what a great inspiration. So Father was never really in my life, but my mother was the central focus. And she's passed, but she's in my heart every day. So
That's an amazing story.
Thank you.
Yeah. What's really amazing is your willingness to share that with us.
Thank you.
Gosh, it's powerful. It's very powerful. So you've told us a little bit about your family of origin. I know that you also have a daughter.
I do.
So tell us a little bit about this part of your family.
So I got married when I was 30 and was married for 10 years. And I wanted children so bad. That was always, I was like, I'm going to have 6 or 7. But the Lord didn't see it that way, so he gave me 1, and that was it. And I can still remember we tried for years to have children, and it just didn't work out. And so I quit my job. I was teaching at the time to go work at the collegiate level, and my husband at the time quit his to go to school, and then I got pregnant the next week with no insurance and no sick time. And so it was like, there you go. But I was so grateful. 9 months later, she came to us. And I'm going to tell you that for my whole life, I always had dreams of a little girl, and she would come talk to me in my dreams and would tell me, like, I'm coming to you and that kind of thing. And so when I got pregnant, I never had a sonogram, but I always knew I had a girl just because of those dreams. And so her name is Sarah. And I'm a little bit of salt of the earth like my mom, and Sarah is pure love. And and she checks me to this day. I can remember one time saying something negative about a kid in a car one day, and she turned to me and she said, you know, Mom, everyone is beautiful. And I thought, okay, really? And so thank you for telling, here's my lesson for the day from my child. And so, she's a great kid. I was really blessed because I was teaching high school, and she went to the same high school that I taught at. I was the speech and debate coach, and she was on my team, and we just have a great relationship. Her dad and I are not together anymore, but we're blessed in that way as well, because we agreed when we split that we would do everything together for the sake of our child. And so for many years, we did vacations together. We have, to this day, always done Christmas together. And so I stayed close to his family. And when she had a little girl last year, her name is Zoe. I wasn't crazy about the name. I kept telling her, you're not having a puppy. But but she loves Zoe. I wanted Sophia. I didn't get it. So the end result is Zozo. We call her Zozo now. She's going to be 2 this year. And when she was born, her dad and I flew up to Raleigh. She lives in Raleigh with her husband. And we were there for the birth. And we both stayed for a couple of weeks. We kind of went back to back to kind of help her out. And we're about to go together again in March. And so we have a great relationship and a beautiful family. And I'm very, very blessed in that sense.
That's so great. So I wanted to ask you about your faith background, but you've given us a little bit of that, even in the name of your grandchild, which means life. Zoe means life, but Sophia means wisdom. So either way.
She should have named her Zoe Sophia. I would have been happy with that. I didn't realize Zoe meant life. I'm a little bit happier now. So, okay.
It does. It does mean life. Okay. Is there anything else you would like us to know about the faith piece? You've given us a glimpse into that.
I just think that when you're my age, because I'm retired, rehired, that you look back on your life and you have those quintessential moments where you go, that made a difference, and that made a difference, and that made a difference. And when I was young, I actually attended the Mormon church for a lot of years. And I just want to say this in terms of service. My mom worked 2 and 3 jobs to make ends meet, so we were latch latch children back then, you just behaved and stayed at home. And so today we can't leave our kids alone, which I think is a disservice sometimes to our children. But the end result is that I can't tell you how many parents picked me up so that I could attend church and came to my house and made sure I went to functions and those types of things. And so it's almost the Hillary Clinton, it takes a village, and there was a village in my life. And I'm grateful to that to this day. So I think faith is really important. That kept me out of trouble. The fact that I had a place to go, and there was Wednesday night and dances on the weekends and all sorts of different things. And I'm no longer a member of that particular denomination, but I will tell you that I'm very grateful to the people and the love that I was given by them. And it served me. I was the principal at Franklin before I came here in El Paso. It's the largest high school in El Paso, had about 3,200 kids. And I had a huge Mormon population there, and school board president, my PTSA president. And I'm glad I had the background with the faith because I really understood and had a much better connection because of that as well. And that's kind of that quintessential moment that I'm talking about.
Yeah, that's helpful to see the foundation.
Yes.
That faith can provide for us in many different ways. And so you're speaking a little bit, you alluded to Franklin, and you talked about your education and how perhaps the academic part wasn't necessarily your favorite, but you knew you wanted to be in education.
Right.
So talk us through that. What was it about education that really had your heart?
So growing up, I was not the easiest kid to deal with in the room. And just to kind of give you a reference to that, my first job was the high school that I graduated from. So I got to go back there and be a teacher at that job. And I had actually a teacher the very first day come to me and say, "I hope you get kids just like you." And it was not a compliment. And I thought to myself, me too, because I really understand those kids. That'll be great. Second most powerful woman in my life was my high school speech coach. Her name was Rita Harlan. And she said, it was I wasn't a rough kid. I wasn't in a lot of trouble, but I definitely stayed on the line. And I was a very strong-willed child, and I was not always respectful. And so I think it was hard to deal with. I think I had a little bit of anger growing up, and I was still kind of dealing. I think one of the greatest moments of this service today is when you talk about inclusion and the fact that, a lot of our kids, I know this, are sitting in classrooms, and they feel alone. And you deal with that, and I think I was that kid. Like, I never really felt like I fit in, and I was always struggling to find where my place was. And I found it with Rita. She called everybody darling, and she was just an amazing woman, and she demanded excellence, which is what I really loved about her. And one of the things about her is that she never gave up on me, and she used to say to me all the time, "Darling, you're just a diamond in the rough." And that has just carried with me forever. It makes me tear every time I think about it, because that's just what she did for me. So, sorry. She's the voice in my head to this day. She said to me when I was in her classroom, "You're a teacher, you're a born teacher, that's what you need to be." I didn't know anything about going to college because I'm the only person in my family to graduate high school. And so when I graduated high school, she took me to college, and she made me register. And then for the next 6 years while I was playing around in college, she stuck with me and made me come back to the school. One of the things that she did is she was one of these women that she could produce anything out of kids, which to this day, I'm just amazed by that. I wasn't a great academic kid, but I wasn't a bad one, probably an average child. But I was a state champion my senior year in debate. And it was because of her. It was totally because of her. Like, she knew how to take whatever strengths you have and really push those forward. And I live my life in the shadow of her, but realizing that what I do for kids is because of what she did for me. So it's a pay it forward game. And she did that not just for me. We did a reunion many, many years, 25 years after we all graduated. We did a reunion, a speeches reunion, and we had 90 people come in from all over the United States and other countries, and many of them had become ministers and actors and all sorts of things. And we did a pass the microphone that night, and everyone talked about the influence she had. So I'm not the only child she touched, but I am grateful forever. And she was in my life until she passed. My daughter was actually in her daughter's wedding as a little flower girl, and we were very close, and I had the wonderful privilege of doing the eulogy at her funeral. And to this day, she's the voice in my head and the reason that I do education. And I love education. There's not anything, I am where I belong, and I wouldn't choose anything else. But I know that it's not just about math on the page and, you know, all the other stuff that we load on top of kids. It's about the connections with the kids. And at this level, for me, it's the connections with the teachers to get them to do what's good for the kids.
So there is always a level of character development going on in that. That's very powerful as well. So tell us how you made your way. You've served in different schools in different cities. How did you make your way to Las Cruces and to Camino?
So I taught for 25 years, and what happens when you're on the high school level and you have a team is you get kids in the 9th grade year and you have them through their senior year. So you build amazing relationships with kids. And then as a teacher, what ends up happening is you say to yourself, I'm going to graduate this bunch, and then I'm going to go do something else. And then the next bunch comes along, and you end up graduating them, and then 25 years goes by. And so that's exactly what happened with me. I taught high school. I taught 10 years on the collegiate level, and then went back to high school, and I loved it. Principal came in. He put me on the leadership team, which I will tell you I went on screaming and kicking. I can still remember the getting a note saying you're going to a convention on Friday, and I went to the secretary and said, why do I have to do this? And she was like, I don't know, Sean, just get on the plane. I was like, I don't want to do this. This is not what I'm here for. And I went, and I actually connected really well with that principal, and he was like, go get your admin certificate. I had my master's. I did college. I went back to back and finished my grad work. And so I went back in and got my admin certificate, and then I didn't do anything with it for about 5 years because I still wasn't done working with kids. I just wanted to be with kids. And my daughter hadn't graduated and gone to college yet either. And so he left, and he went to Austin, and he was at a turnaround school in Austin called Aikens High School. And about the 6th year, he called and said, do you want to be an AP here? And I thought, well, okay, sure. So I moved. I mean, he called me on Wednesday. I was in Austin on Sunday. And I can still remember that drive to Austin in my car thinking, gosh, I hope this is a good decision, because I didn't have a lot of time to think about it. And it turned out to be a great decision. I wasn't crazy about Austin. I would never live there again. But I will tell you that the school that I was at was very rough. It was a South Side school. Turnaround school. We had a lot of issues. We had a restorative justice center on the campus. I built an SEL program for kids, which were classes that they take their 9th grade year, and we had a team of like 5 teachers that taught those kids, and we did a lot for reducing discipline and dealing with issues and those types of things. Aside from that, it was the hands down the very best training I've ever received instructionally, and so the other thing I learned was how to move a school. And after I did 5 years there, during my 4th year, I started applying out, and I thought I want to be a principal. But I didn't like Austin because I didn't have connections in Austin. I didn't have family there. I have a huge network of friends here in El Paso and in Las Cruces, and so I was just like, I want to go home. And so I started applying out, and I will tell you, and I ran a leadership institute for EPISD, and the first day of the Leadership Institute, I said to all the little APs in there who've done 3 years and think we owe them a job, be clear, no one owes you a job. And so you're going to get turned down more than you're going to get a job. Get ready for that. And I knew that because I went for 7 positions. I went to the final round 6 times, and they didn't pick me. And so I was just like, okay, I don't know what the problem is. And so I thought, well, I'll just retire and go back and teach college. That'll be fine. And then Franklin opened, and I applied. I thought there is no way they're going to pick me up. That's the largest, most prestigious school in the city, and there's no way. And they chose me. And so I went to Franklin, which was a great, great experience. The school was going backwards. It had the perception of being a great school, but actually when I got there, I was pretty shocked at what was not happening. And so we turned it around. It had lost points, like 3 points every year in all 4 core areas, and it had 1 distinction out of 7. In 3 years, we increased scores by about 20% across the board, and we had 7 out of 7 distinctions. And so I'm good at the whole school picture. I like the big schools and that. So I stayed there, and in my 5th year, I was moved to an associate superintendent position, which was an interim position, and then they also wanted me to concurrently run Franklin. And this was the lesson I learned from this, and this is how it brought me to Cruces. So my last year that I was in El Paso, which was last year, I probably worked 14 to 16 hours a day. I managed to put on a bunch of weight, and I managed to do nothing but go to work. And I can still remember I was sitting in a class many years ago, and a gentleman by the name of Vern Butler, some of you may know him, he was a superintendent who I have great respect for. He was a Christian top to bottom, and he lives his life that way. He said to us during that meeting, you can work 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, and when you leave that chair, before it's even the warmth is out of it, you will be replaced. So find a balance in your life between family, work, and the spiritual needs you have in your life. And at the end of that year, I realized I've not done any of that. All I have done for a year is work, and I'm unhappy, and I'm not making the kind of progress I would like to make, and I'm done. And so I retired, and I started looking out here. What brought me to Camino was two things. One is I put my application in, I came out, and I had an interview with the Camino group, and I just will tell you it was beautiful. It was I can still remember my last words to that interview committee was, it has been a privilege and honor to sit and speak with you today because I just loved the energy and I loved what they brought to the table. And then when I met with the superintendent, he said, the vision in this district is to lead with kindness. And I said, I'm in. I am tired of being in a rat race where it's about numbers. And where I came from, it was a lot about numbers. And I'm done. I'm done with people being ugly to people. I just want to live in a place where there's kindness. Additionally, my best friend lives up here. She worked for LCPS. She's way retired now. She was the head of the LCPS Foundation until a couple of years ago. And we've been sisters since we were in our 20s, and we are way beyond that now. And she has no kids, and most of her family has passed on. And she was married for 48 years, and her husband passed in January. And his name was Twister. That's a whole nother story, which I could make you laugh forever on. But great guy. But he was a little bit older than her, and he was in his 80s when he went. And she had always said, I don't know what I'm going to do when I lose Twister. I'm going to be alone. And I had always told her, girl, you're never going to be alone. We'll get a place and we'll live together. It's no big deal. My daughter's in Raleigh. I love being out here, so we'll do that. And I moved, and that's where I'm living. So 2 reasons. We're living together. I have my best friend with me. It's great. We're both educators, and so we do a lot of talk. And then the other was that I just really love the community, and I love the vision. I think leading with kindness for kids is the way to go.
Yeah, amen. We would agree with that. So our time is drawing short, but okay. I want to make sure you have the opportunity to speak about the relationship between Morning Star and Camino and kind of what your initial thoughts were about that, and then how do you think it's going and what is still needed?
So when I first got here, and Carrie, one of the secretaries, daughter of my heart these days, great lady, was like, yeah, well, we have a relationship with the church next door. Immediately I thought there was like a separation, but I guess not. And so sure, I'm all about bringing the church, and I think that's great for kids. One of the things that I think is great is this gives kids a place to come. And what we have seen, and when I gave a commitment to Amy, I'd be here every day, and then that has never happened. And so, because things get crazy and busy over there and some days and stuff, and so I drop by occasionally, but I had not been over in a while, and the last time I came, which was a couple of weeks ago, I was just amazed by how many of the kids come here. And many of them just show up for a snack and then they go back to the school. But, one of the things, which makes me feel better, I'm like, you're feeding my kids and they're not even being picked up from here. But one of the things that she said was, we don't care, just if they come by, it gives them a connection. It's tough with kids these days, and I'm just going to tell you, and I say this to faculty every day, or every time we get a chance, and that is that you have no idea what the child that's sitting in front of you is going through. And when I deal with discipline issues on the campus, I'll tell you a recent story that just, was like, okay, so we have a young kid, we caught him with THC. So we've got this kid in, and we find out through the kid that, dad's incarcerated, and mom's selling drugs to get by, and if he behaves and does what he's supposed to do, at night she lets him smoke THC. And that's the household that this kid is in. And if that kid does not need a connection, that's by the grace of God that you pull them out. And, think of my own personal life with that. If there hadn't been a Rita in my life, that my high school coach, and if those people had not picked me up for church every week, and as an adult, I think of the gas and the time and everything else they did for me, I would have fallen through the cracks, guaranteed. I have an older sister who did. And so the end result is that when we think of our kids, we have to think of it that way. I said, I don't care if that child comes from the wealthiest home in the neighborhood. You have no idea what's going on in the home because most kids don't tell you. So great needs that I see. We have a lot of kids whose parents are incarcerated. That's a silent epidemic in our society. Kids whose parents are incarcerated do not share that. They don't go to class and say, my dad called me from prison last night. That doesn't happen. And so one of the biggest needs I think we have is to do outreach. We have over 2 million kids in our country in that situation. And if we had outreach for those kids, that they had a place to go where they could talk to people about that and where they feel comfortable and they're accepted because of it and they're not embarrassed by the fact that their parents are being punished at this time. I have one child whose both parents are incarcerated at this time. And to be able to be supportive and not judgmental about what's going on in that home, I think is important. And so anything that we can do from the church level down to our kiddos in terms of social responsibility and good decision making. When I have kids in the office that have bullied, I say to them every single time, if we can be anything, we can be kind. If we can be anything, we can be kind. It doesn't take that much for us to be kind to one another. So I'm asking you to change that behavior and to think every morning, I'll say, put it on your refrigerator. If I can be anything, I can be kind. And I think social responsibility is a big part of that. Kids are impulsive at this age. I really thought this was funny, but I came up behind a kid and he was mocking me. And to a group of kids, their little eyes got real big because he didn't know I was behind him and he was performing. And and he was like, this is Miss Menace. Stop that. Knock it off. Do this. If you can be anything, you can be kind. And so I was like, dot, dot. And the kid turns to me, he's like, oh, my God. I was like, are you marking me? And he was like, yeah, I kind of am. I said, good job. That's totally me. That's right. Quit touching each other. Be good. And so, but, I think that we have to put that message out there for those kiddos every single day. I can't thank you enough. One of the things that, I know you call on us for service occasionally. We did a canned food drive. Our 6th graders rocked it. Our 7th and 8th graders was, but we get pizza to the 6th graders for that. So there you go. And then we did a sock drive at Christmas. Those are good for kids. Those are really good for kids. I'm a firm believer that you have to teach kids service. I don't think they work enough. I don't think, get out and mow the lawn, get your room cleaned up. I think we do a lot of stuff in our cafeteria. When we give them a detention, we make them wash down tables with us. We all clean. Administration, everybody does the same job on that campus, and so I think that teaches them some good character traits. And so I say that if you have service, lay it on us and let us help, because I think that's a great lesson as well. The other is that even the smallest token sometimes for kiddos will make a difference. So like the snacks and stuff, they don't say thank you very often, but the bottom line is I guarantee you that they're appreciative of it. For Christmas, myself and my 2 administrators, and we were a great team. We love each other tremendously. I bought them shirts that says, mine said the principal elf, theirs said the assistant principal elf, and we went door to door with our kids, and we gave every child a small stocking with a Camino keychain that said Happy Holidays to them. And I thought, I'm going to find these stockings all over the campus at the end of the day. They're going to think this is so silly. I've never seen kids more appreciative than that day. And it built culture tremendously. Just to go by and say, here, sweetie, we said Happy Holidays because we didn't know religion's preferences. This is for you. We found none of them there, and they talked about the fact that they did it. And it brought a lot of culture for my teachers as well. The fact that we spoke to every child before they left for the holidays. And so I thought to myself, if there's one kid on this campus that doesn't have Christmas, it's not a large gift, but at least it's a token that somebody there cares for them. And so I think that those are the things we can do.
Thank you. That's very helpful. We want to make sure we have at least a couple minutes for questions. Do any of you have any questions? Yeah, Steve. Okay.
Yeah, I agree. I think they're great kids. I just think that we need to be continuously in service.
No, what she said was there are a few students who come and get snacks and go back down the hill. Right.
To get picked up. If they're in extracurricular activities, they can stay in school. Right, but yes, the school does close, yes. Yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
No, it's good for clarity. And I will say that it's just a few kids who will walk up and walk back down. And I say, if you're willing to put in that effort to walk all the way up that hill for a bag of chips, we'll be glad to give you that. No, I know you are. I just wanted to clarify. We're not talking about many. We're talking about a few. And like, man, if you're going to put in that effort. Yeah, my comment was separate from yours, Rick. I wasn't responding to that. Yeah, our numbers have gone up. Yes. I mean, and that is something for you all to know. We started with signing in between 25 and 30, and now we're signing in between 75 and 85 on a given day. And part of that is because we are here. We're here. And thank you for letting us do that.
Oh, I'm not letting anything, you're serving us, for sure. So,
Good.
I
Okay,
appreciate it so much.
So Christy and then Alejandra, and then we'll.
Just a quick thing. My kids were Camino kids when Camino first opened, and we were members here. And this parking lot thing has been going on, because y'all know my kids are not young. And it's been going on for a long time, but not like this. It was just parking lot kids, and I would come pick them up here. But it's been a wonderful relationship for a long, long time, and I'm hoping it's a relationship like that for a long, long time.
What other forms of like volunteer service can be done for the schools? Like, is there someone we could contact about finding out what programs there are?
Sure, we have a couple of after-school programs right now. One of the things that we're pushing is we have a program called Girls Can, and they're actually going to do a workshop for those kiddos. I think it's February the 4th, where we're taking our 6th grade girls, as many as we can get, and it shows them, potential collegiately and that kind of thing. It's a career program. But we have an after-school program called Kids Can. There's a lot of after-school programs that I could send you that, because sometimes we don't have people who volunteer to actually take those on, so we're not able to offer them. And then the summer, I really believe that in the summer, kids need a place to go. They don't need to be on the couch hanging out at home. And so the district has opened up our ability to offer workshops and any kind of quick camps or anything that we want to do as well. And so we may need some, and I put that out to teachers about 5 times already. And I'm hopeful that, even if it's a 3-day camp that's like a little dance camp, I don't think it all has to be academic, but something fun kids can come connect to and that kind of stuff, and we can look for volunteers for that. But I'm going to tell you that the work you do here is amazing. It may not seem like a lot to say we open up every day and kids get picked up here, but I think that I Love Church message was very powerful because middle school kids, they don't do a lot of praising. Everything's like, it's okay. And so you don't know truly what they're thinking, but I think this connection is great. The more they see adults, the better.
Amy,
Yeah.
we have a question, a point of clarification and a statement from the flight deck.
Sure.
El Paso High is the best school in El Paso. And then the statement is that how many of you all here in the Morningstar family would like to see Sean Mena come preach some Sunday?
There you go, Sean.
Sure.
That's your next invitation.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you all so much for your time. Let's thank Principal Mena for her time.
Sean,
We'll have to have you back.
it's a real privilege to be here today.
And we're not rushing you. You're welcome.